The sun had barely begun its gentle climb over the horizon when Emily opened her eyes. She loved mornings, not because they were early, but because they carried a certain promise. A promise that each day was a new opportunity to think, to explore, and to remember things that mattered. Today, she decided, she would focus on keeping her mind sharp, as lively and playful as it had been in her youth. She stretched, feeling the familiar pull in her muscles, and made her way to the kitchen. The aroma of coffee greeted her like an old friend, and as she sipped, her thoughts wandered to the lessons she had learned about the brain. She remembered reading that the mind was like a garden, and if it was neglected, weeds of forgetfulness and confusion could take over. But with care, it could bloom endlessly. Emily's first task of the day was a walk in the park. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and wet leaves. With each step, she noticed how her thoughts seemed to expand, how memories of childhood laughter and schoolyard games bubbled up unexpectedly. She realized that moving her body helped her mind move too. The rhythm of her steps seemed to set the rhythm of her thoughts. She wondered if others noticed this connection between movement and clarity, between the simple act of walking and the subtle sharpening of the mind. At the park, children ran and played, their laughter bright and contagious. Emily found herself smiling at their energy, remembering how curiosity had always sparked the first sparks of her learning. She thought about the importance of new experiences, how the brain thrived when it was challenged, when it encountered things it had never known before. She resolved to try something new today, perhaps a new route home, a new path in the park that would make her mind adapt, notice, and remember. Returning home, Emily poured herself a bowl of fresh fruit, the colors vibrant and appealing. As she tasted the sweetness of the berries and the tang of citrus, she reflected on the power of nourishment. She had read that the brain, like the body, responded to what it was fed. Foods rich in color, variety, and life seemed to awaken her thoughts and invigorate her mood. Eating slowly, savoring each bite, she considered how each decision she made could strengthen her mind. Could the simple act of choosing one fruit over another truly shape the landscape of her thoughts? She liked to believe it could. After breakfast, she settled in her favorite chair by the window with a book she had been meaning to read for weeks. The words on the page were familiar yet strange, weaving a story that demanded attention, imagination, and memory. Emily knew that reading was more than pleasure, it was exercise for her mind. It forced her to visualize, to anticipate, and to empathize. Each paragraph created a new path in her brain, each character a challenge to understand another perspective. She lost herself in the story, and when she finally looked up, the sunlight had shifted across the room, casting a warm glow that seemed to echo her own awakening thoughts. Emily then decided to write. She picked up her notebook and began to record small observations about her day, thoughts that came to her mind, questions that lingered in her curiosity. Writing was another way to keep her brain young. It required attention, memory, and reflection. As she penned her thoughts, she noticed how connections formed, how ideas that seemed separate in her mind suddenly linked together. Creating a richer, more intricate web of understanding, the afternoon brought a surprise visit from her friend Daniel. They had known each other for years, and their conversations always took them to unexpected places. Daniel arrived with a curious sparkle in his eyes, a story that immediately captured Emily's attention. They talked about books they had read, memories of past adventures, and dreams of journeys they had yet to take. Conversation, Emily realized, was like a dance for the mind. It required listening, responding, recalling, and imagining all at once. Her neurons seemed to hum with activity as they laughed and debated, each idea sparking another as the evening approached. Emily took a moment to meditate. Sitting quietly, she focused on her breath, on the subtle rise and fall of her chest, on the gentle rhythm of life flowing within her. She understood that the mind needed rest as much as it needed stimulation. Without pause, the thoughts could become tangled, but with calm, clarity could emerge. Meditation, she had learned, was a way to prune the garden of the mind, removing distractions and fostering inner peace. Night fell, and Emily prepared for bed. She reflected on the day, on the small but significant ways she had nurtured her brain. She thought about the walk, the fruit, the reading, the writing, the conversation, and the meditation. Each action had been like a brushstroke on the canvas of her mind, keeping it vibrant, alive, and curious. She realized that the secret to a young mind was not some magical potion or rare practice, but the simple, mindful choices made every day. And as she drifted into sleep, Emily felt a quiet satisfaction. She had cared for her brain with attention and love, and in return, it had rewarded her with clarity, memory, and imagination. She knew tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities, and she looked forward to meeting them with a mind that was as youthful as it was wise. The world outside grew still, but within Emily, a garden of thoughts flourished. She smiled in her sleep, imagining a mind that would never stop growing, learning, and dreaming. The next morning, Emily woke to the soft patter of rain against her window. There was something soothing about the sound, like a gentle rhythm that coaxed the mind into focus. She lingered in bed for a few moments, letting the day unfold slowly in her imagination. The rain seemed to encourage reflection, and she thought about how her brain responded to novelty even in simple ways. She remembered the importance of embracing small changes, of noticing shifts in routine, for it was in these subtle differences that her mind found new paths to explore. After a warm cup of herbal tea, she decided to try a new hobby she had been curious about for weeks. She had bought a set of paints and brushes, and the blank canvas in her studio seemed to beckon her. Emily had always believed that creativity kept the mind elastic, and she felt an excitement she had not experienced in years. As her brush moved across the canvas, she let her thoughts flow freely, colors blending in unexpected ways. Each stroke required attention, decision-making, and a willingness to experiment. She noticed how quickly her mind adapted to challenges, how it sought solutions when mistakes occurred, and how imagination sparked joy and curiosity simultaneously. The afternoon light shifted as Emily took a break to make a simple meal. She chopped fresh vegetables, enjoying the textures and scents that filled her kitchen. Cooking had always been more than just sustenance for her. It was an exercise in planning, memory, and sensory awareness. Remembering recipes, adjusting flavors, and timing each step required concentration and mindfulness. She felt her mind sharpening with each task, her thoughts as crisp and fresh as the ingredients she used. As she savored her meal, she pondered how the brain thrived on variety, on challenges that were enjoyable rather than stressful, on experiences that brought satisfaction along with engagement. Later, Emily decided to engage in a puzzle that had been waiting on her shelf for months. It was not a simple puzzle, but one that demanded strategy, attention to detail, and patience. She spread the pieces across the table and began to sort them, her mind working to recognize patterns, colors, and shapes. As she pieced together the image, she felt a surge of satisfaction with each connection, each piece that fit perfectly. It was as if her neurons were dancing, each synapse lighting up in a celebration of problem solving. She reflected on how challenges, even small ones, kept the mind nimble, and she smiled at the thought that even playful activities could be exercises in mental longevity. In the evening, Emily joined an online discussion group she had been a part of for years. The conversation revolved around literature and philosophy, topics that demanded active thinking, comprehension, and articulation. She listened intently, noting subtle nuances in other participants' opinions, reflecting on her own perspective, and crafting thoughtful responses. Conversation, she realized again, was a living exercise for the mind. It required memory to recall past discussions, imagination to envision possibilities, and reasoning to form conclusions. By the time the discussion ended, Emily felt invigorated, her mind buzzing with ideas and reflections. As night approached, she reflected on the day while tending to her small indoor garden. The act of caring for plants, noticing their growth and responding to their needs, had a surprising effect on her cognitive state. It demanded patience, observation, and foresight. She realized that nurturing life, whether in a plant, a thought, or a friendship, created a sense of continuity and purpose that nourished the brain as much as any exercise or puzzle could. The rhythm of watering, pruning, and arranging created a quiet meditation, a harmony between action and reflection. Later, curled in her chair with a notebook and pen, Emily began to write about her experiences. She described the rain, the colors on her canvas, the patterns of her puzzle, and the voices in her discussion group. Writing, she knew, was more than documentation. It was a bridge between memory, analysis, and creativity. As she translated her thoughts into words, she discovered connections she had not noticed before, insights that made her day feel even richer. Her mind, she realized, was continually growing, continually finding new pathways, even in the most familiar routines. Before bed, Emily practiced a short sequence of mental exercises she had read about in an old psychology book. These were not complex or strenuous, but they required focus, imagination, and flexibility. She visualized shapes, recalled lists of words, and imagined stories within stories. Her mind, she noticed, responded eagerly to these challenges, engaging fully in ways that felt joyful rather than forced. She understood that the key was consistency and curiosity. Embracing small exercises as a natural and enjoyable part of life. Finally, as she lay down under the soft sheets, Emily reflected on the subtle but profound ways she had nurtured her mind that day. Movement, creativity, conversation, nourishment, and reflection all had contributed to a sense of mental vitality. She felt a sense of calm satisfaction, knowing that her efforts were not about achieving a distant goal, but about savoring the present and fostering a mind that could continue to adapt, learn, and imagine. Sleep came easily, deep and restorative, as her brain quietly processed the experiences and insights of the day, weaving them into the tapestry of her memory. Emily's journey, she realized, was not about avoiding aging or preventing decline in dramatic ways. It was about cultivating a life in which the brain was engaged, cherished, and celebrated every day. She understood that the most profound lessons were often found in the ordinary moments, the laughter of friends, the brushstroke of a painting, the quiet observation of a garden. These were the moments that kept her mind young, resilient, and alive. And if you want to explore more ways to nurture your mind and keep your brain as vibrant as Emily's, I share stories like this every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one.